So I know this movie was science fiction, but this had the most unbelievably invincible baby I've ever seen. Those of you who have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. So The Giver is directed by Philip Noyce, written by Michael Mitnick and Robert B. Wade, and it's based on the popular book by Lois Lowry. And this movie stars Brenton Thwaites, Odeya Rush, Jeff Bridges, and Meryl Streep. So The Giver takes place in this dystopian society where apparently humanity has been especially evil, so the elders of the world or whatever split people into communities where their emotions are taken away, their individuality, to the point that they can't see color anymore. And everyone in these communities has like a tailor-made role in society. And we follow a boy named Jonas, played by Brenton Thwaites, who becomes the receiver of memory. And the receiver of memory, what he does is he goes to the giver, and the giver transmits memories of the past, of emotion, of color to him. And through this training, Jonas begins to realize that people not having individuality isn't cool really, and because these emotions are being suppressed and stuff, certain evils in society are taking place unnoticed. So like he begins to rebel against this system. The Giver is something like Jeff Bridges' dream project. Like he's been wanting to make this movie for decades, I think. He wanted his dad to play the Giver, and he never really was able to make this into a movie until I think the YA explosion of recent years. I think that's what kind of gave him the push. And I'm a fan of the book. I think it's a really kind of deep and dark young adult novel. And but when I was reading it, I remember trying to imagine it as a movie, and I just really couldn't. Like I feel like it doesn't really translate well into film. And after watching it this movie is kind of frustrating because it does have good ideas, sort of, but everything in this movie feels like half of a good idea. Like they know they have the path of how to make a good movie, but they don't necessarily hit that goal. First of all, visually speaking, I do think that certain elements of this movie, like the dwellings and like the bikes and stuff, like smaller details in this movie, they do look good. They do look just right. They have that minimalist, dystopian sense to them. But when this movie tries to go for bigger structures and really overtly futuristic things like the spaceships and whatever, it really just all looks really fake. And a big part of this movie is the fact that it starts out being black and white because these characters can't see color, they can't feel emotions and stuff. But I don't feel like the shift to color was done well enough, I think. Because number one, they show color like the first 10 minutes of this movie, which I think was a huge mistake because I feel like they really should have let the black and whiteness like linger with the audience to make it really feel stark and creepy and eerie. And because they don't really focus on the black and whiteness of the earlier parts of this movie, when color becomes introduced, the color isn't very stimulating at all. It's not like Pleasantville. It's not like when you first see color, it's like, whoa, whole new world. This movie really does feel like obviously it was filmed in color and they just made the earlier parts black and white. As for the editing in this movie, I really do think it's just really bad. Um, the way this movie is cut together, it feels like it's in a hurry the entire time. And the bad thing about this is that it doesn't allow us to kind of take in the world. We just feel like we're pushed in to this world and we're kind of introduced to it very quickly and then we're off to the plot. But for a movie like this, like futuristic setting, it has lots of weighty ideas about it. I think it really kind of needed to let us take it in first before pushing us to a plot. And whenever the giver gives Jonas a memory, they always use like montage sequences, and I think that was so overused. Like they could have just saved those montages for certain, important memories, but then there are other memories I think that really should could have benefited from just being their own unique little things, like their own little short films. Like the memories for war and the sled and love and stuff like that. But instead, all we get is like a flurry of images, and we don't really. It doesn't feel that like, we don't really get the message, I think. Another effect of this movie being a bit too quickly paced, I think, is that the stakes never feel high enough. Again, we never are able to absorb ourselves into this world, so we never get this sense that a lot is at stake. It just kind of feels like these people are off on their little bubble adventure. And with the characters, I get that some of the characters are supposed to be dull and boring and stuff because they don't have emotion and all that, but it doesn't feel creepy, it doesn't feel eerie or anything. It just feels like these people are dull and boring because they're actually dull and boring. So these people don't really add to the world again, like Asher and Fiona and stuff. It just feels like they're there. Like there's nothing to them at all. Even the main characters like Jonas and the Giver, unfortunately for me, they do begin to feel like plot devices at a certain point. You know, they're just there to further a certain point. And this movie does try to have, you know, these monotonous dialogue. You know, people keep saying, I accept your apology and stuff like that, but that gets old really fast. In the end, it does begin to sound like self parody, and there's just way too much exposition also in the dialogue. Like, again, you know, this movie does not trust its audience to just kind of get the messages themselves. It just keeps spelling things out for them. The only real bright spot I'd say in this movie is Jeff Bridges, definitely. He's the only one who's really committing to this role. Like, it's obvious he's wanted to be involved in something like this for a long time. He really does capture the giver's multi-layered fatigue, I think. You know, he's old physically, he also has all this pain inside because of all the memories, and he's fed up with the fact that everyone around him is just a robot. Meryl Streep is decent in this movie. She's not going to win any Oscars for this, definitely, because her character is like nothing to do. I feel like Streep could have channeled a bit more Stepford Wives into her performance just to make it a bit more different. But Brendan Thwaites and Adair Rush fulfill like the basic requirements of being a young adult lead. You know, they have your standard emotions and stuff, but I really feel like they just can't handle the complexity that this movie has later on. You know, it just feels like they're not enough to carry this amount of subtext or whatever. And the way Philip Noyce directs this movie, it's unfortunately really, really bland in my opinion, which is a shame because it has this source material has a lot going for it, but the way he directs it is just really, really kind of there's no flair to it at all. With the exception of the Harry Potter movies and the Hunger Games movies, the way young adult adaptations are filmed nowadays is that the themes are treated very superficially. You know, they like focusing on like love and just like very face value kind of stuff. But here with source material like The Giver that goes really really deep, you don't really get that sense. You know, it becomes like a standard adventure sci-fi dystopian thing. Granted, Philip Noyce definitely has a lot of respect for this material and he's able to pull off certain key moments very well. However, I think that it does get it just gets very unimaginative as it goes on because it's this movie is missing that artistic license. You know, I feel like people who adapt books really do have to kind of put their original spin on it, and here it just doesn't happen. Ultimately, The Giver is just an movie. I really feel like it could have been done much better. Like, I think one way it could have happened is that if they allowed Jeff Bridges to direct it, and I don't think he's directed anything else before, but I think this would have been a cool like directorial debut from him. And the fact that he has so much passion for it, I think it would have kind of guided him to make a better product. And please, studios, stop ruining these YA franchises and stuff. Granted, I don't watch a lot of these things, but there's a way to do them right, as proven by The Hunger Games and Harry Potter. And just don't do them right. Come on, there's a lot of substance in some of these YA franchises. Anyway, that is my review for The Giver. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Do you love it? Did you hate it? Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.